So Soul in this game is actually a lot easier to deal with, in my opinion. It didn't help that last time we played as Kai, and I feel like that was a scripted fight. I think that's the case in this game too, where basically if you play Kai, you have to fight Soul. If you play Soul, you have to fight Kai. There are several matchups in arcade mode that are predetermined. Most of them are random though. But yeah, the story of this game is basically set a year after the original game, after the defeat of Justice. Ow, that could have gone better. I'm still trying to use the special, by the way. Not going super well. And guarded once again. I hope we can see it eventually, because it's actually a really cool special. Yeah, not having the best luck so far. I'm determined to show this off at this point, partly because of how little success we've been having with showing it off. So there, we finally got to show it off. But yeah, the story is set a year after the initial tournament from the first game. Another gear has been discovered. So there's basically a $500,000 bounty to hunt down this gear. So basically everyone's competing to be the first to fight this gear to claim the bounty. In Jam's case, I think she wants to use the money for her restaurant. Canonically, Jam is not the character who defeats the gear in question, but is my main, so I figured it'd be easier to get through the story mode with Jam in comparison to the actual canon character, who is Soul in this case. Ow. Let's show this off again. Alright, so our next opponent is Zato 1. I don't know if I mentioned this in the original playthrough. I think we did fight Zato in that playthrough, but he has this like demon companion along with him who I'm pretty sure is named Eddie, if I'm remembering right. Zato is actually not an easy character to fight in my opinion because of his summon mechanic, because of having to worry about like essentially a second character who can attack you. But yeah, it is a shame that the story mode is relegated to Guilty Gear X Plus, and that version has never been localized. At the time of this recording at least, it's never been localized. If they ever re-release the game, I hope they do include the X Plus story content. Obviously you can like read about it online, but in terms of like actually experiencing the story mode, it's not the easiest because of it being in Japanese. And Guilty Gear usually has a lot of lore, so not being able to actually follow this part of the story is kind of unfortunate. So we have a mirror match with Jam. One nice detail is if you have a mirror match, you actually have a special theme instead of the traditional characters theme, which is kind of a nice little detail to kind of make it a little bit more intense. I'm actually really bad at mirror matches in fighting games usually. I mean, I am playing on the lowest difficulty, so this won't be too bad. But in general, mirror matches is something I struggle with, weirdly enough, despite, you'd think it would actually make it easier because I know the character's moves, and yet it almost never does. I usually struggle, usually because I lose track of who I'm actually playing. I think that's part of the problem. Alright, so moving on to round 2, that didn't go too badly. I do feel like there should have been a difficulty mode between easy and beginner, which is what the new difficulty for the PS2 version is called, because I honestly feel like beginner is actually too easy, but I honestly tried easy and I could not get through it. I'd basically get stuck against certain opponents, like Johnny being one. Certain characters in particular I have a really hard time fighting, like Milia, Johnny, May, and Faust. He's also a very interesting character, especially having played the first game. I kind of hoped that he would show up, but we're actually running out of opponents to fight. You have a pretty sizable roster in this game, so you actually don't see every character in a run, which is kind of nice because it creates variety, but it also leads to very inconsistent runs. That was the first round we actually lost, because I was trying to perform like a special move, and that was a mistake, because Jam Super had priority over my regular special. So yeah, one of my biggest issues with Guilty Gear is I don't feel like I use all the buttons because I panic. Which is part of the reason why I tend to play on lower difficulty modes whenever possible, but it does create situations where I almost feel like I don't understand all of the nuance of it, to the point where I can't deal with like higher level situations, like with more difficult AI, and especially like online in some of the later games. One thing I actually noticed a lot is that the music doesn't loop properly, like it definitely ended and then restarted. So even though they sacrifice themselves to bring back justice, Testament's here, they're fine. They're actually trying to protect the gear that everyone is hunting. Yeah, it's not really explained to my knowledge of how Testament survived the tournament. But yeah, they're here. Between that original Let's Play now, Testament has actually been added into Strive, and from what I gather is actually a pretty different character in how they play, which is kind of cool. I haven't actually tried the DLC yet. I actually don't own any of the DLC characters, but I would be curious in actually trying to play as Testament, because again, I'm still kind of trying to find a main in that game, to be honest. Testament's pretty strong, and this isn't even like the peak of their strength. That would be more like Accent Core, where they're really overpowered. But they can also summon a familiar, which is not great since that's usually is summoned behind you. Another thing worth mentioning is between that original Let's Play now, the character of Tessima is now referred to as they, them instead of he, him, which is actually really cool, honestly. They've always been sort of like gender neutral anyway, but it's nice to actually have official confirmation of that. Overall, this fight's actually going really well. Again, I know I am not playing on the harder difficulties, so I'm not overly shocked that this isn't going, you know, too badly, but still, we did struggle a little bit even on the lower difficulties, so it's nice that this is actually going relatively smoothly. And the final opponent of arcade mode is Dizzy, a half-gear who's very powerful and is the one who everyone is trying to defeat for the bounty. In general, Dizzy's actually kind of an interesting character. Her wings are actually sentient beings, if I'm not mistaken, named Undyne and Necro, and they have a lot of different magic attacks that we have to worry about. In general, this won't be too bad, though. She has a really good theme song, too. Alright, so far so good. Round 1 done. So all we have to do is win one more and we're good to go. Overall, again, not that I should be overly, like, surprised, but yeah, this actually went pretty smoothly, all things considered. Though, to be fair, I definitely should not say that out loud, because I am slightly prone to jinxing, so maybe saying that is not the best thing, especially when Dizzy is a pretty tough opponent. So, yeah, let's try to be careful here, as the tide is definitely turning. I might try to end this with an instant kill for some extra flair, but we'll see if we can actually land this. The answer is no, so we'll just finish the fight with regular attacks. If we can. This might actually be a loss again. And with that, we've reached the end of arcade mode. Again, no story, that's saved for the other version. Weirdly enough, Guilty Gear X Plus released like under 2 months from the international release of this game, which is basically just a translated port of the Dreamcast version. So yeah, literally like within 2 months, the expanded version was released only in Japan, which is kind of a shame. And yeah, that version has never been localized. Again, if they ever remake this game, I would love to see the story mode included. There's also a bunch of other extras added as well, like additional characters. But yeah, basically the game ends with Soul canonically defeating Dizzy and then not killing her. And then she ends up being recruited by Johnny, and so she joins the pirate crew. And then, to my knowledge, Jam takes credit for killing Dizzy because she disappears. So she ends up getting the bounty money. At least that's my understanding of the plot. In general, yeah, I wish there was a little bit more story included in arcade mode. But oh well, this was meant as an arcade game. The previous game was actually a console game. It was PS1. I don't think the original was ever released in arcade, so it makes sense that it was more story-focused, while this game being an arcade game first and then ported to Dreamcast and PS2 would be more like arcade-focused, and then the actual Guilty Gear X Plus would have the actual story mode. There was also Guilty Gear X 1.5, which was a Japan-only arcade version with several like balance changes. There's also a GBA version. I actually would like to show that off at some point, maybe for like a special one-off, because it's actually a very interesting port, even though it's obviously not the ideal way to play Guilty Gear X. In general, I can't really recommend this game because it's never been officially re-released, so your best bet is playing the PS2 version, which is missing the extra Japanese-only story content. So yeah, I really hope this game eventually gets a remake along the lines of the original Guilty Gear being released for Steam and Switch in 2019. This is the only mainline Guilty Gear game that is not actually available on current platforms, and it's kind of a shame because this is a very story-important game in the series because of introducing characters like Dizzy, who is a major character going forward. So yeah, I hope someday they eventually re-release this game, because it is actually fun. A lot of the sprites actually hold up really well and were actually used up until Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R, which was like 2013 or something, so I think shows how well the visual style holds up. Yeah, in general, it is fun. It's very short, obviously, because there's no like story content and not a lot in the way of extras, but there is still a few more things to go over, which we'll be doing next time. So the credits should be wrapping up pretty soon. And we have our best scores. The one was my practice run. But yeah, we'll continue going over some of the extra features next time. So thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for more Guilty Gear X.